I said, the Bible you're reading is not trustworthy because Jesus spoke in Aramaic, did he not? You have words like Talitha Kum and Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani in the Bible. That's Jesus speaking in Aramaic. But the earliest church was in Jerusalem, so they must have spoken Hebrew. And by the time the New Testament was actually written, it was written in Greek, so you've got a translation of a translation before you actually have the New Testament written. And then before it comes to English, it spends 1,000 years in the Latin Vulgate. So it goes to Latin first before it goes to German, and then it comes to English in the KJV. So you got a translation of a translation of a translation of a translation of a translation, and that's why you have so many different versions of the Bible. You got the KJV, the NIV, the NRSV, the NESV, the who knows what V. You got so many versions of the Bible. How do I know which one's actually the Word of God? I'd used this argument on so many Christians before, and none of them really had a response. But David, like I said, didn't just say, hey, I believe the Bible one day. He looked for reasons. And so he had those reasons to share with me. And he said, Nabeel, let me ask you a question. Just a moment ago, I saw you speaking on the phone with your mother. Was that in English? I said, no. And he said, but then I asked you what your mom said, and you told me in English. Did you give me a bad translation? No. Look, Nabeel, you're multilingual, and so were the disciples. When they talked to Jesus in Aramaic, they could accurately translate that message into the Greek, and that's exactly what they did when they wrote the New Testament. And of that New Testament, the Greek, we have over 5,500 New Testament manuscripts today, from which we can reconstruct the entire New Testament many times over. You see, we have some New Testaments that go back to the 300s. Whole Bible. So you can't say it's been changed. We have it from the 300. We have some manuscripts that go back even further to within 100 years of Jesus. He said if we lost all those Greek New Testament manuscripts, guess what? We have 10,000 Latin, Coptic, Syriac translations of the New Testament from early times with which we could reconstruct the entire New Testament many times again. And if we lost all those, in the first 150 years after Jesus, there were people writing sermons and letters to one another where they quoted the New Testament. And so just from those letters and sermons, we can reconstruct virtually the entire New Testament many times over again. Nabeel, we know with certainty what the New Testament originally said. And I looked at him and I said, David, you're making this up. I've talked to hundreds of Christians. Not a single one has said this before. He said, you think I'm making this up? I said, I think you're making up. He says, bring it. I'm like, it's been brought. Let's go. And so from that point on, we were just talking about our faith. Now understand, David was a man of faith and I was a man of faith. And even though I was a Muslim and he was a Christian, we connected on that level. And so we became best friends. We signed up for courses just to keep arguing with each other.